There's no better feeling than knowing you got a good deal. And most favored nation's better than that. It's knowing you got the best deal. It's like when you walk into Costco. No one walks out of Costco thinking, I wonder if I should have price shopped around. They've really established in the mind of the consumer that they are the best available price. And anything you get there, you are getting at the best available price. And it's very natural to say, well, why can't we have that in the world of medicines? And the reality is, it just isn't that simple. The problem with the Costco analogy for medicine is it takes into account the second drug that might be manufactured at low cost and can be sold at low cost at scale. They don't have the first drug, which cost $2 billion, $3 billion, and took 10, 20 years to develop. There's simply no analogy in the Costco world of something that is so complex as developing a new medicine. But it's sunk into the minds of individuals that we should be getting a better deal. And they're not wrong. The US has tools in order to make other countries pay their fair share, and it's absolutely obvious that they're not paying their fair share. Our friends over at No Patients Left Behind put out a recent study that showed at least 26% of the cost of drugs that Americans pay is global free riding. Other countries that should be, could be, and need to be paying more aren't paying their fair share, and our drugs are 26% more expensive. But I think we also have to think about what we have in our system that other countries don't. In a price-controlled universal healthcare system, like the NHS in Great Britain, they call a drug company, they say we're willing to pay this price, take it or leave it, and sometimes that means patients miss out. And that's it. That's all the actors in the supply chain. The drug company and the NHS agree to a deal well below the value of the medicine. In the United States, over the last 50 years, we have developed so many middlemen between the innovator that manufactures a drug and the patient that now 50 cents on every dollar spent on pharmaceuticals in this country goes to someone other than the manufacturer. These are those PBMs you've been hearing about that Congress wants to reform. And so when you think about the cost of our medicines, we already have a 50% markup that we really should be doing something about. So domestically, there are options to lower the price of drugs by removing those middlemen and ensuring that the savings that they realize don't go to large Fortune 10 companies, but instead go to the patients that are ultimately taking the drug. But we should also be looking for solutions around the world. The US does swing a big bat. Look at the tariff conversation we're having. But we've missed opportunities in Japan, the European Union, to insist, like we do for national defense, that they pay their fair share. Donald Trump very successfully went to the NATO countries and insisted that they start spending more on defense and that they not free ride on the major trillion-dollar investments the US makes each year in global weaponry. A similar conversation has to be had about innovative pharmaceuticals, because the reality is if we start paying what other countries pay, not only will we lose the medicines of tomorrow, but we're very well going to lose the medicines of today. I think it's important to remember in comparing our healthcare system to those in Europe or other socialized countries, it's not an apples to apples or apples to oranges comparison. It's an apples to zebra one. And one of the big factors in that is generics. Generics make up 9 in 10 prescriptions in the United States that we fill. We save trillions of dollars each decade by moving away from branded pharmaceuticals to low-cost generics that really, frankly, reflect the cost of production and very little else. Other foreign countries don't have robust generics markets. In Europe, they would love nothing more than to see a strong generic market. But they killed the outlook for that market by setting price controls on the branded medicines. Going back to our Costco example, think of the Kirkland brand. Think of the ability to sell that exact same drug at a much lower price under a different brand. It's not a perfect comparison, I'll grant that, but I do think it keeps in mind that that's how our system works and works well in the United States. The very coffee you get from the Kirkland brand is the same Starbucks coffee you pay 10 times more for when you walk into a Starbucks or when you buy their beans. The tuna is the same tuna as a high-end brand. But when you walk into a Costco, you're accessing all of that previous innovation at a much lower price. That is actually how it's working. And that doesn't exist in Europe, and we should be mindful of that. It is a very challenging time already for the generics industry. And when you hear news about shortages, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about there just not being enough money in the system for generics to be made. That's the direction we would head in, and head in fast, in a most favored nation reality. Incubate's going to be looking deeper, as I'm sure several other folks will be researching, are the cost savings real here? We have to remember that a proposal like this is being used politically in the short term. But what are the long-term costs of moving away from a generics industry? I think they would eat a lot into the initial celebration of getting our drugs at lower prices, to say nothing of the fact that the drugs might not be available, and we certainly wouldn't have the money for R&D to invest further.